Hello, and welcome to the Next Level Loan Officers Podcast, the number one podcast for loan officers by loan officers.
With real originators in the trenches, just like you every single day.
If they can go there, how come I can't go there? Well, you can.
Like if you don't water your plants, you don't have future crops. You can't feed your family. You can't make a living. This is watering your crops.
You have to find your community and you have to dig in.
If it wasn't for you guys, I can tell you, probably my trajectory would have been a completely different one.
We'll see you on the next Level Loan Officers Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Next Level Loan Officers Podcast. I'm your host today, Sean Zalmanoff, joined by a very special guest as we are into this season of giving. And I just wanted to take a moment and appreciate you all. If you didn't know, we've reached over 140,000 downloads on this podcast, the number one podcast for loan officers, by loan officers. And we thought we'd have a special treat and take a little bit of spin on something outside of the mortgage business, but something that personally for me, when I heard Blake talk, I knew it could have an amazing impact on my life, not only in the future, but here today. Yeah. So Blake Brewer, you have created a legacy letter challenge out of something that happened very personal in your life. And now you help other people in this amazing way. So, man, dude, just tell the world a little bit about yourself that doesn't know you in our world yet.
Absolutely. Well, Sean, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on. I know you have a great podcast and great audience, and so it's really an honor to be here. Yeah, I believe that the most powerful words spoken on the planet are spoken by a father and spoken by a mother. And so the answer is how do we get those words, those life-changing words into our children's life with all the noise that it's going on in the world? And so my dad did something for me that absolutely changed my life. When I was 19 years old, I got a call from my mom saying that we were going to Hawaii. I said, heck yeah, let's go. And so the first day that we were there, we were standing there on the beach, and my mom and my sister, they were just kind of laying there. And my dad said, man, we're in Hawaii. I'm not just going to lay on the beach. I'm going back out there. And so I remember running to catch up to my dad. And so, Sean, I don't know how you would describe your dad or how your audience would describe your dad. But I had a really good dad. And so I would describe him as my hero. And so even on that day, as I was standing next to my dad, I still felt like a little kid standing next to him, even though I was 19 years old. Now, part of that is he was actually a really big guy, and he had been drafted by the Atlanta Falcons to play tight end. He was better known as Terry Bradshaw's tight end at Louisiana Tech. And so they were best friends and roommates. And my dad was a very quiet, kind of more introverted guy, very humble. And so he hardly ever told anyone that he was Terry Bradshaw's tight end. But I told everybody that my dad played football at Terry Bradshaw. It was really my claim to fame. But as we put on our snorkel gear and we're heading out into the water, my dad looked at me with a big smile and said, I'm glad you're out here with me. It made me feel like $1 million. We go out into the water. I'm having the time of my life, nowhere else in the world that I'd rather be. And we get out and we ended up in an area that I now know is called Witch's Brew, which is known for its treacherous water. And it was treacherous that day. And I realized I didn't know where my dad was. And so I began to scan the water looking for him. And I eventually saw him. And I could tell that my dad was struggling. And he looked at me and he began to yell for help. And my dad had this big, deep, booming voice, and his yell for help was more like a whimper. And so I swam to my dad as quickly as I could to help him out. By the time I reached him, he was underneath the water and he was unconscious. And my mind was spinning, and I knew I had to get my dad to shore. So to the best of my ability, I put my arms around my dad and began to swim with him. Luckily, a nearby snorkeler saw what was happening and helped me get my dad to shore. The lifeguards showed up and they began to do CPR to my dad. And I really thought that at any moment that my dad was going to come back to, and that the water was going to kind of gurgle out of his mouth and his eyes were going to flicker open. But it never happened. And so my dad ended up drowning. And so it literally went from one of the best moments of my life to the worst in just a matter of minutes. And I was there on the beach just asking God, what the heck just happened? And how are we going to make it without my dad? How am I going to make it without my dad? So then it was a few hours later that we're back in the condo. I'm sitting on the edge of the bed in the back bedroom, and my mom appeared in the doorway. And she said, I found something in your dad's briefcase, something that I know he was going to give you on this trip. And I had no idea what she was talking about, but she was holding some sheets of paper in her hands. And she walked across the room and handed them to me. And at the top, it said, Dear Blake, Natalie, and Marcus. It was a letter. And it was to me and my sister and brother. And apparently he'd been working on this letter for several months, having no idea that he was about to die, having no idea that this would be his final words to me. And so I began to read this letter, and it was everything that I needed in that moment. It was, I felt so loved that my dad would write this letter. Like, don't tell me my dad didn't love us. My dad was a hospital administrator. He ref football games on the side. He was involved in our church. Like, he was a very busy guy. Now that I'm a dad, I have a 6, 5, and 2-year-old, and I see how busy I am with life. And for my dad to in the midst of all of his busyness, took the time to write this letter. Like my dad loved us. My dad also shared some family values, and shared some wisdom. The last line of this letter, my dad wrote, and I believe only God could have allowed my dad to write this, but he wrote, as you're being faithful to the Bible, you're often going to find yourself in the minority here on earth. But I can assure you that in heaven, you'll be in the majority. Love your dear old dad. And I remember thinking, man, I'm going to see my dad again. I'm going to see that smile. And so it was my dad's letter that really helped me get through that time in my life. That next year, as I was grieving really hard, it gave me hope. Like, I'm going to make it through this. And so it's for the last 19 years, my dad's letter has continued to influence me and guide me. And as I started my career after I graduated from the University of Arkansas and got married and started having kids. And so I don't even know where my life would be right now if my dad hadn't written that letter.
You know, Blake, you recently spoke here in St. Louis, and that's how we connected. And you're on this podcast and getting to share the message with more people. And so I was really fortunate. I don't know, it seemed like just a few minutes, but you probably spoke for an hour and a half at the event that I was at, and you walked us through the framing of the letter and the different stages, and really gave me a lot of insight. My kids are a similar age. I only have 2. My boys are 6 and 8. And, there's just so many things that I want to say to them. And there's so many things that we do say on a regular basis, but I'm working on a letter right now for them. And, my boys are 6 and 8. These last few years, my wife's and I relationship has been strained at times, as many people who have 2 full-blooded ninjas, or just any kids at all, gets as well too. And I'm working on one for her to deliver this holiday season. So first of all, I just, I want to thank you for that time that we spent together, because the format and the framework and everything that you gave was great. And we talked a lot about, like, when is the best time to do it. And, because you got yours at 19, and that really helped you, because maybe your dad intended to write more, maybe he didn't, but that's a question that, at least for the time being, you won't know the answer to for quite a while. And because we had questions like, what about if I want to revise it? And it's like, it's great. Just write another letter. I think about the little notes that I put in my kids' backpacks a couple times a week of just, hey, dad loves you, or I'm proud of you for this. And just to be able to write this letter in the way that, that I want them to hear. And then, gosh, maybe it'll be a holiday tradition that I do it. Maybe it'll be, I'll write in mini letters throughout the year. I don't know, but it's been really exciting to start the process of doing this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that's so cool that your kids are going to have that letter. For me, as the last 19 years, as I've just told my story to people, man, what's the number one thing that people tell me? Man, I wish I had a letter from my dad. But then every once in a while, I'd meet someone who would say, hey, I also have a letter from my dad. It's like we're in the club together. Like we're in the I got a letter from my dad club. And so when my kids were young, I realized, man, I got to write them a letter. I mean, if anyone knows the value of a letter from their dad, it's me. And I want my kids to be in the club. And that's when as I went to write this letter, I saw how difficult it is as I was staring at a blank sheet of paper to write this letter. And when I finished, though, man, and it took a little bit of time. It was just hanging over my head, but I powered through, got it done, and it felt amazing, like to get this letter done. To know that I had created something that really will be with them for the rest of their life. Yeah. And so then that it was through that, and through hearing other people like tell me about it, getting a life-changing letter from their dad, that's when the mission started. So that was 2 years ago. The mission to help 1 million dads write at least one well-written, meaningful, lasting legacy letter. Now, we've also included moms in the mission now as well. And so, but I knew that parents are going to be like me, looking at that blank sheet of paper. And so that's when we created a process and the framework to write the letter, and to really like help parents put the best stuff in there. The things that everybody wants to hear from their mom and their dad. I love you. I'm proud of you. I believe in you. And when someone has these things in their life from their mom and their dad, man, they are just set up to be more successful, to be confident, to be able to navigate difficult situations. I mean, every day our children are waking up, and the question is, are they going to go win the day? And we know that the battle starts in the mind. And the people that are successful, man, they have a different thought life than the people that are not. And so as parents, we can help our children have a better thought life. But it all starts to help them win the battle of the mind. We gotta penetrate the heart, and that's what this letter does, man. We connect with our children's heart in a way that for a lot of people, they've never connected with in this way. And so, man, it's amazing to write this letter and to give this letter, to have your children receive it and read it.
So I've been doing a lot of reading this year on Ryan Holiday books, and in my opinion, he's probably the best modern day philosopher that we have. And it's interesting because for a couple of years, I've had this email chain that I get every day called the Daily Dad, and then I started reading some of his other stuff, and I was like, wait, this has got to be him writing this. And there's been so many lessons that I've learned in like how we appreciate our children from, hey, like, I'm not proud you scored a goal. I'm proud about the practice that you put in to get to the position to score the goal. I'm not proud that you got an A on this test. I'm proud of the effort that you put in to prepare to get the A on the test. And so it's been very interesting. And I'm like, I don't know. Things just happen in the world how they're supposed to happen. But like fate's all put me together to this point where like I've learned so much more about myself, really worked on being a lot better father this year. And now to have the opportunity to write this letter and give it to him as well too. It's really cool because it's going to be better than it would have just 6 months ago, or definitely a whole lot better than last year. And I'm so glad that there's something that I can give them that they'll be able to read, and I can read to them whenever their little heart desires.
Yeah. And I think I shared with you that I gave it my letter to my daughter when she was 4.
Yeah.
And I decided to go ahead and read it to her. And, each night I'm normally reading her a princess book or something like that. And then that night I said, hey, Daddy's got something for you. And we're sitting on her bed. I began to read this letter, and I forgot to take into account how emotional I was going to be reading this letter. And man, I was just boo-hooing reading this letter. And she had never seen me cry before. So I was, wondering what in the world is she thinking? Well, I finished the letter and I look up at her and she looks at me and she says, Daddy, can you read me that princess book right now? And, I'm like, yeah, I can read you the princess book. But the next day she went up to my wife and she said, last night, Daddy read me a message. Can he read me that message again tonight? And so my daughter, she didn't understand all the concepts in that letter. She will in time, but she got the main one. She's got a daddy that loves her. And so that's one of the most important things she needs to know, that there is nothing that she can do tomorrow that can make me love her any more or any less. And when she has that, when she knows that, that's going to bring a confidence to her life that that really only I can provide as her dad. So it's fun to write this letter. It's cool that you're doing that, and I'm excited to hear how it goes when you give it.
No, it is. It's funny because knowing my boys, if we get through the whole letter without my 6-year-old cracking a butt or a fart joke, it'll be a miracle. And my 8-year-old is probably going to ask me if I'm dying. But it'll be interesting to see the follow-up afterwards, like when they ask me, because I've got there's a couple of different books just on like how to behave and why. There's a really good kids book a couple good kids books that I read from Andy Andrews to them. And it's always funny because like you were talking about with your letter, how she asked about it later, like there's these things that it doesn't appear that they meet any friction. It just appears to slide off them the second they hear it. But then all of a sudden, a week later or a few days later, hey, can we read this again? Hey, can we do this again? And then it starts to be that those are the books that they gravitate to almost in any season. And it's good to be able to share that. I'm really excited.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing about the letter. Not only is it cutting through the noise, you're winning their heart, but it's return toable. For the rest of their life, they can return to the letter. I return to my dad's letter and I read things in there. And there's things that hit me in a new way when I read it. Like there's things I read it now. I read it. I pulled out a month ago and I read it. And I'm like, man, I never saw it in that way. Now that I'm 39 years old, I read it differently than when I was 19. And my dad is still influencing me, guiding me to this day. My grandkids will know their great grandfather, and he'll be influencing them because of this letter.
So friends, family, people I don't know yet listening to this podcast. So you can go to the Legacy Letter Challenge and check this out. Wherever you're listening to this to, on Spotify, iTunes, we'll have some show notes for you as well. So you can click on some links. One of the things that like you were just telling me about was being able to gift this in a larger manner, whether somebody wanted to have a presentation or do gift it to clients, to referral partners. And so we're going to have that link in there as well too, but just tell people a little bit about that. Cause I was like, wow, this would be amazing.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that. So
so we have the master class. Anyone can sign up right now and start going through it. And then we do have a free framework. So anyone, you'll have the link to that. Anyone listening, you can go download the free framework of everything that goes into this letter. But we have a lot of people that partner with us on this incredible mission who provide our program either to their clients or, like you said, referral partners. And we build them a landing page and they send it to them. And I really believe it's one of the greatest gifts you could ever give someone, is to help them connect with and invest in their children in a way that they probably never have before. And so it's just a way to, to show people how much you care about them and their family. So it's a really great gift to give to people.
It is awesome. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for this idea. I'm glad the universe aligned to put you in my path when it did. And I'm so excited to be able to share this message with our loan officer community so they can have an impact in many other people's lives with this as well too. Again, we'll have all these links in the show notes for you all. And Blake, I appreciate you. I know we'll see each other more. Again, thank you all for listening. This is your Next Level Loan Officers podcast, the #1 podcast for loan officers by loan officers. Blake, thank you for joining us. I'm Sean Zalmanoff. Peace out, y'all.